Let's talk about how I discern when to revive and when not to revive a vintage nail polish, and how sometimes it's better for its preservation not to. Before I started making these videos, there really wasn't a guide for reviving these more antique bottles. There's been a vintage polish collecting community for a while, and primarily these collectors would collect and sometimes revive more recent bottles, mostly 90s stuff, geared towards their own nostalgia and personal tastes rather than approaching them as I do, where I treat them like historical artifacts of material culture. Now, with my background being in archaeology, cataloging, and archiving, I really found that I was able to transfer my skills to this underserved crossover of artifact history and women's history. As my page has become more popular, I've noticed a shift in how people are collecting now. With a lot of new interest and quite a few people dipping their toes into this hobby, I wanted to disclose more of my process, and I get questioned a lot on how I decide what I revive and what I leave as is. We'll start by talking about discoloration. This mid-century Rimmel in Talked About Pink isn't so pink anymore. The cap is a bit stuck, but you can see as I tilt the bottle, if you look under the cap, you can see it used to be much brighter, and there's a trace of it on the cap as well that was wiped off. The polish inside, of course, could be reliquefied, but I don't revive polish just to make them flow. I revive them to study the color. If I was to swatch this and share it, I'd be doing future historians a disservice by creating an inaccurate record for this. As someone who does some art restoration, cleaning old varnish off of antique paintings from my own collection, I can see why art restoration creators never disclose their varnish dissolving solutions, because there's always the chance someone will be a little overzealous in DIY and priceless objects get destroyed. This 1940s nails craft in Azalea is also discolored. When I showed this in the haul video after I bought it, I had a lot of people saying I should revive it to see what happens, despite saying I wouldn't do so. It is mostly turned yellow, but there's small encapsulated traces of the original light pink color. If I was to add thinner, it would disappear into the rest of the discolored polish. All of the historical value to this lies in those traces of color. And it's the same story for this 50s Cutex Cute Tomata. Much of it has shifted to an off-white beige, but there's splotches of red in there. If I added thinner, the red would be dulled. Inside the cap is where we see the truest version of the color, since it's sheltered away from UV rays. This is the last bastion of Cute Tomata. We're not going to disturb her. Next, we have dreaded rust contamination. This 40s Chen Yu in black cherry had a rusted metal wand that I removed and cleaned out. The wands only rust when the polish completely dries out, and then, not protected by liquid polish, the wand becomes exposed to relative humidity that seeps into the cap. I removed every bit of rust and added thinner about 3 years ago, and the mass of polish will not soften one bit. I'm not sure why exactly this happens from a chemistry standpoint, but it's like the exposure to rust has a Medusa effect on the polish. The same goes for these two 1940s wartime clean nail polishes. I cleaned out the rust on the other one and attempted to revive it with no luck, and then this one I've yet to attempt, but I feel like it will be the same. And then these 1940s Duraglass cinnamons all have various forms of funk. The wands on these are wooden, and this one literally looks like a twig, and they've deteriorated into the polish along with the bristles. If you look into the cap, you can see that original color as well. And then these two are similar, but also have what I've coined as dead solvent. It's not just separated, but it has no impact to melt the polish beneath it, so if the polish under it was revivable, I'd pour the dead solvent off and add fresh. And then tragically, we have improperly thinned Urban Decay glitters. Spare change should be a silver with silver glitter, but somewhere down the line someone either thinned it with acetone or a bad thinner like Sally's Beauty Secret thinner, which has heptane. The bad chemistry added doesn't completely melt the glitter, but it strips it of the colored foiling that sits on the likely mylar glitter. So that's why you can see it still kind of sparkle. This one is called Litter, and it used to have 2 particle sizes of holographic glitter. You can now only see the pale husk of glitter that used to exist. Here it is next to the Urban FX glitter, which has only the small particle hollow glitter. It would have looked very similar though. And then Scream by Urban Decay is a black that used to have silver glitter. That, sadly, is no longer the case. This was a collab with the first Scream movie, so it's very rare. But there's no point in reviving something that can never be what it once was. I do have some exceptions, though, that I may be considering, since I have 3 original bottles of Burnout from the year 2000 Urban Angels collection, and a mini from 2001 before they changed the formula. This used to be pink, as you can see on the rim. I'll never use this bottle as I want to preserve the only evidence I have of the original color. But since I have 3 of these, I'm considering reviving one and possibly checking the peel-off label of the original dye list that I could maybe use to add back the original dye and match it to the mini. If I did something like that though, I'd give it a hang tag to disclose the alteration, as I want to be transparent to those who may come to possess my collection in the future, and if I swatched it, it would be disclosed there as well, because transparency to me is of utmost importance. But I hope I was helpful in answering those questions I've had in the past about how I decide what is and what isn't in a revivable state, insofar as my perspective on responsible preservation. If you have any questions or thoughts, leave them in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer. And as always, thanks for watching.